where in the world is Patrick? We were all set to record this Nolan Batman episode like weeks ago, and then he bails because of work and obligations and all that crap. And now he's running late on the second try. Clearly, he doesn't know anything about podcasting. Where is that man?
Speak of the devil, and he shall appear.
What the hell are you wearing?
To speak of such a franchise, you must understand the characters.
Oh, really? Does it look like Halloween? Granted, we're recording this on the 25th, so maybe this will go up right around Halloween. But that stupid mask doesn't matter on an audio show, my friend. And now you sound all muffled, and I'm guessing your delay was due to running around 24/7 looking for that stupid mask. How exactly is that supposed to help Sketch Watch Play?
Turn off the microphone.
No, they stay on. It's my podcast.
Does it feel like your podcast?
I've let you guest star on the show again.
And this gives you power over me?
What is this?
Your microphone and your laptop have been important. Until now.
What are you?
I'm Sketchwatch Plays Reckoning. Here to fill the void left since the Pokemon episode.
You're an asshole.
I'm a necessary asshole.
Okay, that's good. I improvised that last bit.
Yep.
Hello everyone, and welcome to episode 20 of Sketch Watch Play. I am John Fleury.
And I am Patrick.
No. We ended the skit. Take it off. It goes off. Take it off.
Do I have to?
Yes.
Alright. Okay.
That was for the sake of a joke. When we have that sound quality for the entire episode.
Yeah.
It's annoying.
I could see that being wearing. Sorry.
I feel like that's going to tie into when we talk about a certain character.
Yep, fair enough.
But thank you so much for being back on the show. It's been a long time. It has been close to a year, actually.
Since the Pokemon episode.
Yeah, one of our most popular episodes, actually.
I've been listening to the podcast the whole way through. I'm a couple episodes behind, but I've been listening throughout the year, and I love everything.
How dare you not stay up to date on your brother's activities?
Yeah, I know. I'm a piece of crap.
You
I'm sorry.
fiend.
Yes.
No, but seriously, for people who are either newer listeners or never listened to the Pokemon episode from late last year, or I guess it was, we filmed it, we recorded it on New Year's Eve, so it came out at the beginning of the year.
Okay.
But I really recommend people go back and listen to the one if they haven't. It was not only was it just fun to talk about Pokemon, but Patrick was just a fun guy and gelled really well with talking with me and Chris about all sorts of stuff. I believe we also talked about Rogue One, because you guys had seen it and I hadn't.
That was right after that point.
And we've been meaning to have you back on for a while. There was just one little factor getting in the way, which was you've spent most of the past 8 years or so living in New York City.
Yep, and I just moved back into the D.C. area.
And yes, about close to a month ago, we finally moved closer to home. And since we are still in, I don't even know if it's the middle of our Chrysalis period, we're continuing this revolving door of guest hosts, old and new. Felipe kicked that off, and actually, for those who don't...
Speaking of which, sorry, I hate to interrupt. Have you gotten any closer to solving the puzzle of where Chris is? Was there any kind of scavenger hunt left behind? Is there any kind of process?
It was kind of one of those Professor Layton situations. I used to have all my hidden coins, still can figure it out, and I just went, fuck it.
We'll work with the puzzles afterwards.
Yeah. But no, in all honesty, I do want to, again, reach to discuss some things. Just, if you want to follow the show and us in general and get more announcements ahead of time, I recently announced on the Sketchwatch Play Twitter. You can find us on Twitter and Facebook under Sketchwatch Play, no spaces or hyphens or any of that nonsense. So the
and if you'd like to find my alternative podcast, Sketch-Watch-Play, put in the hyphens. It's a very different show, and it is terrifying.
What's it about?
It's about these people I've locked in an all white room, and all they have is the first season of Pokemon playing on repeat, a sketch pad, and we're watching them. I'm doing the watching, so that's my sketch.
What have they drawn so far?
Nothing you'd want to see.
Okay,
no, nothing good.
If that's all they're exposed to, I don't want to. Yeah, but I think we've talked enough Pokemon for 1 year.
That seems fair.
Though maybe I'll have you back when the Detective Pikachu movie comes out.
Ugh, God.
I'm so conflicted because it's being written by the woman who wrote Guardians of the Galaxy and the creator of Gravity Falls, which is a really good Disney Channel show, but it's a live-action world with a CG talking Pikachu based on a game that never came out of Japan.
I feel like it's not fair to stack it up against this, but I just, ever since the Dragon Ball Z movie, I've had no interest in seeing.
This is a different beast, I feel.
I hear what you're saying, but I saw
that would be like if they were
bad...
That would be like if they were doing a straight live action version of the anime, which would also be terrifying. I'd rather they just do it like a new CG version. But that is not what we're here to talk about.
Sure.
But I will just say again, if you follow our Twitter and Facebook, we usually announce new episodes in advance if we don't announce them on the show. And I do have the following 2 episodes of this. Not dates locked, but the guests and subjects are locked. The episode after this will also, kind of a theme, since you are my brother, we will be having Chris's brother, Tyrone Selby, return, and we will be doing a retrospective of all the theatrical X-Men movies.
Dang, man. A lot to cover.
I'm halfway there. The problem is I have to catch up on the ones people say not to watch. Mm-hmm. And granted, finish Logan, which I watched half of, and that's a good movie, at least. And then after that will be a debut guest, Mark Gonzalez from... Surprise, surprise, the Generation Animation family. I have actually never podcasted with him live before. On my guest appearances of that show, he didn't make it for some of them. And we've only had 2 of the 5 co-hosts on so far. People, if you've listened to the episodes with Felipe or Tyler, that's where they're from. Me and Chris have also guest starred on some of their shows if you go look at them. And Mark is a really cool guy. We chat on Twitter sometimes. And he has picked another kind of gargantuan task, but thankfully one I have a lot of experience with. We're going to do a general retrospective of Final Fantasy.
Oh, nice. Mm-hmm. That's something I would have less to say. I don't
You'd
have as much experience.
But not... If it was Kingdom Hearts, I think you'd be...
If it was Kingdom Hearts, I'd be right in there.
Well, I'm going to say right now, I totally intend to do a retrospective right before 3 comes out.
That's
which
fair.
Will hopefully be next year. I don't want Chris or anybody to jinx it by going like, well, they say next year. I'm like, no, dude, give me hope about something.
The game's never coming out.
Shut up. But... No, we do have a very big topic to discuss for our main thing. If you knew ahead of time, or I don't know why you would skip past that opening because I was on the edge of my seat listening to that. But also we do have some recent media to discuss. Both games. Mine's a little more niche, so let's go first. Patrick, you have been spending some quality time with Destiny 2.
We all know what needs to be done.
Get up close and personal with Gulp. Put a bullet in his head. Then maybe eat a sandwich.
Yeah, so I was a pretty huge fan of the first Destiny game. Mm-hmm. I think I've always needed I've always loved first person shooters, or third person shooters, but I've needed I needed that kind of RPG feel of it to really let me drop in.
I do find it a little ironic because I think we're both admitted not Halo fans.
No, I would go so far as to say I straight up could just never get into Halo.
But Destiny's been a very different beast from day one.
Yeah, and I'm always a fan of doing some kind of like questing, like dungeon crawling kind of stuff to upgrade armor, etc. And I think Destiny 2 is an improvement on the first game. I've really enjoyed. They've put in a little bit more effort into the story, so you feel a little bit more clear about what you're fighting for, and it does feel like there's more on the line and more at stake. It's still, to be totally honest, I'd still rather there was a little bit more story to it. Mm-hmm. But it does have a really great format, and I'm excited to be back in the world a little bit. And I hate to... I know I said I was going to talk about one game, but one other thing I do want to bring up is that at the beginning of October, I did get to try the beta for Battlefront 2.
Yes,
and
you loved the first one as well.
I love Star Wars Battlefront. I will admit that I think 50% of my love has nothing to do with like the game mechanics itself. It's Star Wars, and I love it. Mm-hmm.
Also, if people are going to complain that it's inferior to the old ones, we never played the old ones, so we cannot make that comparison. Sorry.
But Battlefront 2 is kind of like a whole revamp. It is very different. Now, it's got a class system.
I want to bring up, even though you were a fan of both those first ones, they received a lot of criticism from reviewers and fans. And actually, I did like Battlefront 2. Destiny I think in general, as a format wasn't my thing, but Battlefront was pretty good. So how do you think Battlefront also does in terms of addressing what people complained about in terms of mechanics and such?
Well, I think it's what I really like about it is that it's got some class systems now. There's 4 different troop types now.
I do like that.
Which makes it feel a little bit more diverse. It affects your overall defenses and health and shields, but it also affects the types of weapons you can use.
Do you have a favorite class?
Right now there is like a heavy armored machine gun class. Tank type class that has been pretty fun to do, but I haven't really played enough. I didn't have enough time during the beta to really dive deep into all of them, but there's there's also so many different upgrades, and they've updated the card system so that it's less about just unlocking new equipment, and you can now unlock and change up your stats a lot more.
Oh, it doesn't just affect your abilities, but your stats.
Yep.
Were stats even a thing in the first game?
Not really.
Just the weapons, I guess.
Just the weapons. And I mean, you had star cards that you could use to modify a lot of the stuff you were doing, but they were mostly about abilities. And also, and I know that there's going to be a lot of people with divided opinions on this, but getting to play as kind of over the course of all 7 movies, 8 this December, it's actually been kind of fun. I had a really great time playing as the battle droids from Phantom Menace
Roger, Roger.
in the game. Roger, Roger. And
I gotta say, I told you this already. I love the fact that when you complain about the prequels, the line you brought up was, "I'm a Trodarian!
I'm a Trodarian!
Like,
The mind tricks don't work on
not
me.
Jar Jar, not the Asian stereotypes, just that Watto.
well, it's just because I like doing the voice.
Yeah, no.
But no, I think I'm really excited about it. I don't have, there's more maps, and there seems to be just more work of unlocking to do, and I'm excited.
You say there seems to be more substance there.
I think so, and I'm also super excited for the single-player campaign.
Yeah.
I know it's only 5 to 7 hours long, but
Most shooter campaigns. Now, none of that was included in the beta, I'm guessing.
No, none of that was included in the beta, so we're all going to have to wait and see on that one.
I do love the hook that it's basically from the point of view of Imperial soldiers fall right after the Empire falls.
Right after the Empire falls, kind of leading up to, I think, where Force Awakens
I'm sure
kind of
there are
begins.
going to be stuff to like flesh out all the First Order stuff. I know, like I read, like if you read comics and stuff, the idea is that a bunch of Splinter Republics were made, and one that went in the wrong direction. And that's how it started over.
And there also is I can't think of the name of it off the top of my head, but Google it if you're interested. There is a pre-novelization coming out about the Inferno Squad, which is the group in Battlefront 2 that is about what they were doing leading up to where the game starts. So
So it's kind of what they were doing during the original trilogy.
I think at least during
Jedi.
all of Jedi.
Yeah.
But I'd have to go back and be sure. But
I think the first cutscene is them on Endor watching the Death Star explode.
Yeah, exactly.
Like the opposite reaction to the end of that movie, like, oh no.
So I'm super excited for that.
But also Destiny.
Yep.
Is there any other stuff you want to talk about regarding that in terms of what you've enjoyed and what stands out to you about that game that's like discussion worthy or bring up?
I mean, the fact of the matter is, I think Destiny is great. The reason it works so well for me is because I'm not like a huge first-person shooter, like 4-player deathmatch style person.
No, you kind of like either cooperative or campaign stuff more.
Yeah, and I think that Destiny, something that it's always done well, and I think does even better in this game, is it unites 4 to however many players all on a common mission where you're forced to work together. And there's a lot more of that. And I think for me personally, it is a wonderful genre mix between the RPG and first shooter.
I will say co-op shooters I generally get more enjoyment because I don't play that many shooters, so I suck at them. So I either enjoy stuff that forces you into teams like Overwatch, which I played a lot of, but I also like when other shooters do. You played a game with horde modes, right?
Yep.
I was interested in that with Undead Nightmare, the Red Dead expansion.
Okay, which I never played.
But if you played a horde mode, you know what to expect. It's just cowboys and zombies. It was pretty awesome, and I kind of like that. Last as long as you can element. That's what I did a lot of in like GTA Online and such. But Destiny has I'm guessing there's something like that, and I'm guessing there is still some form of traditional deathmatch for those who want it, like PvP.
Yeah,
because that is still a huge field. And
and that's and I understand why people love that. It's just not for me.
No, but it's also nice that they cater to both audiences.
Yeah.
Though I guess the actual campaign caters more to the cooperative side of things.
Yeah, I think in general, and also there seems to be greater rewards when you're doing like big dungeon raids.
There are a lot of games that do that, yeah.
And so it really
does it do the thing of having you play harder versions of old dungeons?
You can go back and do. I mean, it's broken up into like there's huge planets basically, and they all have like specific areas. And then once you like beat the game, the story part of the game, there are all these other missions that are unlocked. Some of them are very similar to older missions. I don't know if they're. I don't know if they're exactly the same, but it's a lot of going back and playing certainly harder missions.
I've had one major dip into actual MMOs in the past. I know you used to play World of Warcraft and a little bit of the Old Republic.
Yeah,
and my main exposure was Final Fantasy XIV because I did a review of it a couple years back and kept going. And even though I never beat it, I did research into it, and that was the thing that would encourage you to replay old dungeons and unlock hard versions of them because you would get better gear.
Yeah.
Like they gave you incentive, like The idea of like that loot systems are pretty ingenious when you think about it.
Oh yeah, and also Destiny provides you with a pretty cool system of like there's some like legendary or like exotic
that's always a
versions
thing,
of armor,
yeah.
and if you you find one that you like particularly love and you like that. One, you might just like the look, but you also might like certain boosts it gives you. It offers you the ability to hold on to that item, and even if you find someone stronger than it of the same type,
you can make it appear.
You can destroy the old one and imbue it with that power.
I've seen other loot games like Final Fantasy XIV. Actually, you can unlock that later on, and very different type of game. But Injustice 2 is all about its loot system, and they have an option to they call it like transfigure, where you make one piece of gear look like another that you like the look of more. So that's kind of nice that they're starting to consider that. So. Do you have any major gripes with Destiny 2, though, either compared to the first or on its own?
No, not major gripes. It's the same thing I said at the beginning, which is just that I would always prefer more story, and I get it because I understand why they do things the way they do things, but I am a person who will get like a little bit annoyed if I'm like feeling like I've got a cutscene every 5 minutes.
Never play a Metal Gear Solid game.
Yeah, no, believe me, that's kind of why I don't play them.
Okay,
but I don't have any major gripes with it yet. I'm excited to see if it's anything like the first Destiny. Then the content they're going to roll out post launch is going to be awesome.
Yeah, Destiny 1. Well, you came to Destiny 1 late, and I think people generally agreed by the time it was wrapping up, it was a much better game than when it had launched.
Right.
Because I think when they did the Taken King, they basically revamped the game as a whole. Mm-hmm. So it kind of helps that your first experiences were better than a lot of others. Because they might have had server issues at the beginning, too.
Yeah, and I think when I started playing, there was only one more thing left to come out.
But I gotta get the impression like Bungie always had big ambitions and good ideas for this series, but it took doing one full game to kind of start fine tuning it. That's a lot of great series are like that.
Yeah.
Start out that way.
Now, John, I know that there's a game you wanted to talk about.
Yeah. So I'm going to. This is nowhere near as prominent a game, but it's probably going to be one of my favorites of this year. And since it's an indie game, I think it deserves what hype it can get. I don't think you had heard of it until I told you about it.
No.
It is now available on PC, coming to PS4 and Xbox One before the year's over, and I think they're looking at the Switch. The 3D indie platformer A Hat in Time. Now, do you know anything about this?
I know about it just from you.
Did you watch? I'll time to promote myself again. I did a video review of it just to talk about the unique reasons why I loved it, because it was not for the reasons I was expecting.
Which I did watch, and I will say to anybody out there, so that he doesn't have to plug himself too much, to anybody out there who isn't watching the Bahonkus video reviews, go check out John's page. Check them out. They're really fun and they're really funny, and I think they are great ways to acquaint yourself with some titles you may have otherwise not explored.
I've mostly been doing reviews lately, but I'm going to start doing more like lists or underrated old games and such. And again, if you want to Google anything I've done on because I use the same username across pretty much everything. Just Google Bahonkus, BEHONKISS. I actually just hit 100,000. I wish
100,000.
Let's give it time. I hit 1,000 subscribers yesterday, and I'm sure part of that because also the most popular part of the channel is someone you're familiar with as well. Our grandmother Mimi, me showing her blockbusters and her just cracking up or being bewildered by them, and we just did one her fifth Marvel movie, maybe sixth, the first Thor.
Yep.
And the most viral one is her reacting to Darth Vader's reveal in Empire, like genuinely not knowing.
She made it all the way to 2016 not knowing Darth Vader was Luke's father.
I honestly think...
Oh, sorry, spoiler alert to anybody on the podcast who doesn't know that.
To anybody like Mimi, yeah. To any 9-year-old listening to a podcast.
Yeah.
No, truthfully, I do think she probably hadn't seen the movies as a whole, because... It's the same reason, I started showing her, movies I grew up with, like Aladdin, and I was like, seriously, you babysat us when we were watching this, and she's like, yeah, but I never sat down and watched it. And she said the same thing about Star Wars. She was too busy raising our dad and his siblings. When she became a mom, that took top priority. But don't feel bad for her. She's still a great grandma to this day, and she's the best.
She is the best. And so anybody who wants to check these out, I sincerely think you should go check out the Bahonkus page. That's spelled again. Do you have a jingle?
Not yet.
Okay. Well,
I have a little old music chiptune thing I use.
Okay, no, I got it.
But A Hat in Time.
BEHONKISS. Bahonkus.
It means butt.
Is that good?
Yeah, I wonder if I should edit out the last part. No, I shouldn't.
No, I think
shouldn't.
it's clear.
No, people. Well, no, did I ever tell you about the time that guy emailed me on a forum saying, like, "Dude, your username sounds really cool. I want to use it for the name of a villain in my story. Is that okay?" I said, "Sure, but you should know where it came from because it was one of your friends when I was like 9 using it as for butt. Apparently, the actual thing is Bohunkus.
I refuse that.
Well, anyway,
Hat in Time.
So this is a really sweet game. Interesting thing. This was a crowdfunded Kickstarter game, and I contributed to it, which is how I got my copy 4 years ago. They were originally aiming for a summer of 2014 release with a goal of 30,000. I think they got like 10 times that amount. So
I feel like 90% of your money goes to kickstarting games.
No. 90% of it goes to like game games. And this Friday, Mario Odyssey. Get out of here. But no, Hat in Time. I was at a point where I wasn't thinking this game either this game was going to not come out because there have been a lot of delayed Kickstarter games to just stop, or it was just going to come out and be underwhelming. Because I watched XP in the past, I did like Ukulele quite a bit, but think about like stuff like Mighty Number 9. I feel like that's the most infamous. Like that did not work out the way anybody hoped. Turns out, I'd say it's one of my favorite things to come from Kickstarter so far. So. I knew it was going to be like a return to like the classic style, 3D platforming, some collectibles, jumping on things, some side abilities, just a cute, whimsical atmosphere. But I guess one of the things they put that money towards is this. We were talking about when how we like to have stories in games, and I complain like the platformer is my favorite genre, but more often than not, especially these days, it tends to really de-emphasize story. Like Nintendo's very guilty of this with stuff like Mario and Donkey Kong, some of our favorites. When Rayman came back with the side scrollers, they like jettisoned the story and dialogue pretty much. It's just kind of a shame because even though I love the rest of the game, but the characters are charming. I'm like, okay, we see them futzing around. So that's what this developer Gears for Breakfast. Apparently, they wanted to choose like a very funny sounding name. This is their first game, and almost the entire game is voice acted. And with some generally talented actors, some YouTubers, like a lot of indie people. Actually, the main villain, whose name is Mustache Girl, which is the little girl who happens to have a mustache.
Classic.
She did a voice for the WarioWare cartoon I never finished, the singing voice of Penny Crygor. Very talented lady, Eileen Montgomery, I believe. And they do a clever thing where like each world, because it's kind of like Mario's style of you have a world and you go into each individual chapter to get a different main collectible. There's an overarching subplot to them. So, like, if you go into the spooky forest, right when it starts, a spirit catches you in a net and is like, all right, I need to run my errand for me, sign the contract for your soul. And so it's all building up to you fighting back and, like, getting your soul back. And then the cutest twist, because this main character is so freaking adorable, Hack Kid. She's like this little girl with like a big smile and a top hat. She doesn't really say much. But when he says, all right, you win here, just sign this contract to leave and never come back. She scratches that out and goes like, no, the new stipulation is be nice, be my BFF, let's have fun. And he's like, you don't get how contracts work, but all right. And there's just a lot of charm. Or how like one world, like, because the cool thing it does, like, there are a lot of 3D platforms where you go back and like they do a lot of like different mini games and stuff to that variety. Like, anybody who's played DK64, welcome to bonus stage, just throwing all this crazy stuff at you. The clever thing is this does a lot of things where what you're doing changes, but it still gives you the same basic controls and abilities almost all the time. It feels genuinely intertwined. There's nothing jarring about it or feeling gimmicky. So like when you go on a level where you're on a train and there's a murder mystery, and you got to go around the train being stealthy and collecting evidence, you're still using all of Hat Kid's normal moves. And then at the end, you can just choose any of the suspects and it'll be like, Hat Kid, you did it? All right. I chose the suspect, the victim did it. And then he got up and was like, yeah, I don't want to mess with you. It has a kind of a dark edge to its humor at times, like that, the kind of stuff I'm talking about. And actually, there's a haunted mansion level that is like legit terrifying. Look it up. I think it's Princess Vanessa's Castle or something. I was freaking out the first time I did that because it is not something you see coming in that kind of game. But not only it's like it runs well, it plays well. It's not super long, but I think it's just the right length of time for what you get. But also, this is something I love because I have been kind of gravitating more towards using my PC for stuff outside of system exclusives. The developers have gone into this with full mod support in mind. They're going to, I think it's in beta now, they're going to put out a full editor soon, and people can do like, they can do custom skins and collars for Hat Kid, other power-ups, because she's all about switching hats for different powers. So, of course, I've already got Mario's hat in there. I think I also got Rosalina's crown and a Hammer Brother helmet, and she throws the hammers.
Classic.
But also full levels. Like, you can use existing assets to make your own. People already, people ported Womp's Castle from Mario 64. I'm sure we'll see like some Sonic and Rayman and stuff and such. And it's just very cool, like when you read about how in depth that stuff goes. Like this game going to have a long life beyond its base. And actually, they've said they're going to do 2 free DLC worlds later on because those were Kickstarter stretch goals, as well as co-op, local and online.
Cool.
Like this game really has delivered on its promises and then some, and I can't recommend it enough as a result. I know you said your PC is not super powerful, but it is coming to PS4 later on.
Yeah, which I'll definitely have to check out when it does.
And, just for the record, you did very recently buy a Switch too.
I did, and so I'm like, 8 months late in saying that Breath of the Wild is freaking awesome.
I think it's I think I convinced you because you came over to my place to try it out and I've been meaning to show it to you for a while.
Yeah,
I was just showing you how it's like one of the best games to just mess around in, and that sold you pretty much.
Pretty much, that was kind of the final nail in the coffin. Plus, I knew that Mario Odyssey was coming out really soon.
You're very happy they're returning to the open style.
Yeah, I mean Mario 64.
We've been talking a little bit about Sunshine. We do not like Sunshine, people. It's
not a big Sunshine.
It was a stumble
friend
for us. I actually recommend another podcast that just did an episode about it, Retronauts. Because I feel like even if you like the game, and that's fine, I think they kind of explain why a lot of its the things people take fault with it happened, and how it kind of shaped. It may have been a motivator for Nintendo to make the games more linear and take so long to return to the open style.
Yeah.
But you were saying about 64. That's your favorite Mario?
It might be my favorite Mario. That, or I mean, it's definitely my favorite 3D Mario. Yeah. Unless I guess when you get into that, we can talk about whether or not Super Mario RPG is a favorite.
No.
But
It's not a platformer.
Yeah,
it's a wonderful game though.
But I think it is probably since the N64 my favorite Mario game, and I'm happy to see not just like since it's not a return to form, but like a return to the openness and kind of the exploration.
They were probably encouraged when they saw how Breath of the Wild was coming along.
Yeah,
and I love the fact they said like it is going to be like less overall levels because they're so much bigger, but they're going to be like 30. It's not going to be like going for find one star or moon and then it ends. It's going to be like there's like 30 or so per road, and you can just keep going. It's like just encouraging experimentation and you heard me on the E3 episode, people. I freaked out when they announced the possession mechanic. Mm-hmm. It's awesome.
Yeah.
The only downside is now I don't think we'll ever need Yoshi again.
Well,
I mean, the next game could totally abandon it. So
yeah, fair enough.
But so I recommend A Hat in Time. You recommend Destiny 2.
I recommend Destiny 2, and I'm pretty sure I recommend Battlefront 2 as well.
You recommend the beta that is no longer available.
Exactly.
I will try and see if I can get a quote from you when the full game is out.
That
if
I will
can't have you on the show. I would say I'd do an impression of you, but I've never actually tried to do an impression of you.
We'll just do an impression of Bane, and you'll get there.
I don't know how good it'd be at that either. But speaking of Bane, I think it's time for us to save what we have and move on to our monster of a topic, really.
Yeah, huge
A long time coming and one very dear to the both of us. But let us pause and meditate on... Actually, no, I don't know what I'm going for. I'm going to pause right now.
He's a silent guardian, a watchful protector, a dark knight.
So if you were not aware on our Twitter and Facebook about what we were going to cover this episode, or if you missed us, or no, me, because you weren't on the last episode, you didn't matter then.
Thank you.
Yeah. But hopefully that intro to this episode ticked you off.
I hope that intro pissed you off.
Oh, fucking Bane! God damn it, Batman!
Bane again?
Screw you! No, we're about to talk it's weird to think that it ended 5 years ago, but time does fly. A certain trilogy that is very dear to us and a lot of other people, and especially fans of the franchise it is based on. Or some, I think we'll talk about what can divide some people about it. But look, we both, I'll say right now, me and you both love the Christopher Nolan Batman trilogy.
I think it's great.
It is really damn good. Me, one in particular, but all three are quality films. And of course, those being Batman Begins, The Dark Knight, and The Dark Knight Rises. Mm-hmm. I kind of like to call it the Dark Knight trilogy. It's just a little awkward because you don't have The Dark Knight Begins, but Batman Begins does sound better.
Yeah, I call it the Alfred trilogy, but that's fine.
The Alfred trilogy, well, the Alfred movie was Lego Batman. I'll tell you that.
That's true.
That's when he finally suited up and kicked some ass. No. So this was. It's funny looking back at like what motivated this movie to happen, because I think there's sometimes a case of sometimes you have to hit rock bottom before you can reach your peak, because this would not have happened if not for Batman and Robin.
Which I'm going to go ahead and say now is a great movie.
Okay, define great.
It holds up. It's great to watch. Really good time. I love an ice pun.
you're not making a very genuine face at me right now. Like you are not convincing me. And like,
okay, so I will come out and say I do dislike Batman and Robin. It's a terrible movie. It's fun to watch.
Okay.
Terrible movie though. But the biggest problem with Batman and Robin is that it robbed us of what might have been the greatest movie of all time, which was a Jeff Goldblum-led Scarecrow movie, which
that was a plan
I will say would have been amazing.
Dude, he's in Thor next week. You're getting your Jeff Goldblum in a comic book movie very soon.
I know, but he would have just been off the hook.
That would have been interesting, yeah. But no. I think the two of us. I thought you hated the first Tim Burton Batman.
No, I like the first Tim Burton Batman.
That's a good movie. That was a little before our time in terms of like there have been 2 times a Batman movie has taken the world by storm. That one in Dark Knight. So I think our proper introduction to Batman was actually the cartoon.
Oh yeah, I think Batman the Animated Series was it was a huge part of our childhood, and I'm sure we'll get into it more in here
some other time, more in depth. But like we can talk about it a little bit. But that was like I had heard of Batman before that, but that was what familiarized me with kind of the basics of the idea and the characters.
Right, and to be totally honest, I think when I think back, like one of the most defining characters of anything in my childhood is Mark Hamill's Joker.
Yeah, no, I told you one thing I want to talk about first is one thing that you're always want to hear fans talk about is who's your favorite interpretation of a Batman character, because there's just been so goddamn many. Mm-hmm. And truthfully, Kevin Conroy, for those who know, that was the voice of Batman in that, and most stuff since, including the Arkham and Injustice games, he's my favorite Batman. When I think Batman talking, I think that voice. But when I think Bruce Wayne, I think Christian Bale.
That's interesting. There's something very weird where for somehow, even though I didn't see the original Batman movie like all that often, when I think of Batman, I do think of Michael Keaton.
He's good too. I'm not big on him as Bruce Wayne. I think he looks a little too nerdy, but Batman he worked.
I kind of loved him.
Yeah, no, he is good. And as for Joker, for me, it is like dead even between Hamill and Heath Ledger, because Hamill is the perfect traditional Joker. Like that whole show was very much inspired by like the classic era. It wasn't super dark. It wasn't what it needed to be, but because it was for kids, they couldn't get away with everything. And so Hamill was a good, like he could be just a goof, but also threatening. Ledger was something very unique. So I can actually understand if you don't like the Ledger Joker, because it was a divergence.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me actually, it's interesting. I think I will certainly go on to talk more about it, but I think the Heath Ledger Joker is spectacular and super exciting and like a really interesting take. But when I think of the Joker, like in general, for the rest of my life, it's always going to be the Hamill Joker. Like that is the defining.
I think I told you that
performance
after showing Mimi this trilogy and the Star Wars trilogy, I showed her a clip of 90s Joker, tried to have her guess who it was. I told her, and she like very loudly. Mimi does not get loud often. She went, "You're kidding me." That is kind of mind blowing. But yeah. So after Batman, the first Tim Burton one blew up big. Like, yeah. I'm aware of like what a big impact that movie had in terms of that was the one to first bring the superhero movie some credibility, and Batman as a whole. Because for a while people just thought of Adam West. Right. The comics had gotten darker a few years beforehand with stuff like Dark Knight Returns, but this was kind of to include that in the cartoon, kind of clue people in like Batman could be go for other tones and styles. And then you got a gradual slide in quality with the sequels. Granted, Returns is the only one I have not seen of all the and Adam West of the theatrical ones, so I can't speak for it. Forever was kind of blub, but was not a total train wreck. You were just telling me that the other day. You kind of feel that way too. Like Jim Carrey fits that world.
Yeah, I would say that something about that. While that movie is not a success overall, there's something in the just like the total like discombobulated insanity that makes a Jim Carrey Riddler acceptable and almost still fun to watch.
I can't defend the Two-Face though, and I like Tommy Lee Jones.
Oh no, it's rough stuff.
Well, I think that was more of a character portrayal too. But we'll get to that as well because we have a compare to make. But I appreciate that the fact that like Batman and Robin wasn't just bad quickly. It like word of mouth spread and it underperformed, and that not only did they put plans for that sequel on hold, the series took I think like a 7-year break. And there were a couple attempts to reboot. There was actually did you hear about the attempt to do Year One under Darren Aronofsky?
I'd heard about an attempt to do a Year One movie at one point. Yes. But I don't really have much information on it.
Well, for Year One, I have not seen read the comic, but I've seen the
you should
animated
read
movie.
The comic. It's great.
Yeah, I've seen the animated movie it was based on, which is also good. It's Well, it's technically more of Gordon's story, but it's also the idea is that Batman's just starting out during it, so it's kind of from Gordon's view of the outside looking in at a figure that nobody knows much about quite yet. Also,
there's a great animated movie that everyone should check out. I think Bryan Cranston is Commissioner Gordon in it,
and he's really good in it.
Yeah.
And I've heard usually the comic is even better, so I recommend reading the comic too. But they were going to do some sort of movie that was at least draw inspiration from that, and they had tapped Darren Aronofsky, who have done a wide variety of stuff, working for a Dream. Your favorite movie, The Wrestler.
Yeah,
Patrick hates that movie. And more recently, everybody's favorite movie, Mother.
I have not seen it.
No, I haven't seen it either. I can't speak for it, but it sounds insane.
Yep.
But that didn't happen, and I actually don't know what led them to Christopher Nolan, because he had made a name for himself with Memento at this point, which admittedly I still haven't seen. There are a lot of Nolan movies I haven't seen. I've heard nothing but good things, though. Yeah,
Memento's a good one. Make sure, I don't know if it's been spoiled for you.
No, it hasn't.
Okay, great. Yeah, Memento hasn't been spoiled for you. It's great. I like it an awful lot. It's definitely a grittier tone and like a lower.
It's Nolan. That's not surprising.
Yeah, but it's definitely a lower scale too. That's
fine.
Very very cool though. It's definitely a good idea.
But I guess because this very much was a director driven series compared to when you think of a lot of big commercial blockbusters. Like I think he helped with the script along with his brother Jonathan Nolan, I believe, on all three. And I've read about So this took a very different angle in terms of this is the Batman series with generally its feet firmly planted in the real world. Yeah, you even
this isn't Tim Burton's super gothic,
but this isn't also the comics cartoons and what we have now with the additions of Superman and Apocalypse and just stuff that you couldn't really imagine in the real world. Like his idea was take the basic foundation of Batman, the characters, and both ground them and in some cases put a spin on them, especially regarding the villains. Mm-hmm. And it paid off handsomely.
Yeah, I would think so.
Now I remember I remember seeing Batman Begins with you and our dad.
Yep.
And that obviously I was very impressed by it.
Yeah.
And we are gonna go with them in order, but I'll just say real quick. Then I remember I was not prepared for Dark Knight. I don't think many people were. And it took me 2 viewings for me to realize that it might be my favorite live action movie ever. Because it's such a ride, and then Rise was the one I was the most hyped for, and I'd say it's still more on par with Begins, but still a very solid movie. But let's go in order.
Yeah.
So Batman Begins, I feel like this is kind of a unique movie compared to the others in certain regards. One of those being the look. The one thing the edge I think this has over the sequels is that this does go for a slightly more stylized Gotham.
Yeah, a little bit, but I also think that a lot of the stylized Gotham you're seeing is in more of the flashbacks, like when Bruce is younger.
True, maybe
that feels a little bit on purpose.
But also all the subway stuff, like the color scheme of it, even down the advertising was kind of more like a brown-orange thing, and then when you got to the sequel, it was more blue and gray.
Right, and I actually think, so the reason that this, I'm gonna say one thing that's about as high a compliment as I can give for this movie is I do think that this movie is the most successfully done origin story movie I've ever seen.
Batman or otherwise?
Batman or otherse.
That's another interesting thing is that half the movie is the setup before he even gets the suit.
Right.
And I'm sure some people could take offense with that. I don't. I think I've heard a lot of people say the favorite part of the intro. I like the second half a little more, but it's still cool. This really fleshes out every aspect of how he got to this point, because a lot of the Burton one was left to your imagination outside of the parent's death.
Yeah, and I really feel like I know a lot of people generally hate long origin stories, and I've seen Ang Lee's Hulk, and I get it.
Well, also when Spider-Man did it twice.
Spider-Man did it twice.
Marvel now wisely went, no, we're going to skip that.
Yeah, but I mean, at the end of the day, it's very interesting, and the reason I think, but the reason it serves to explain one of the reasons this movie feels so different from the following 2 movies is that unlike Dark Knight or Dark Knight Rises, this is Batman's movie. This movie is about Bruce Wayne, and it is about Batman, and you're not sitting around getting excited or pumped for the next time that the villain is gonna come out.
You don't even see the actual villain until the last third.
Right, and to be fair, we're given the Scarecrow information, and I think I think what's the name?
Cillian Murphy.
I think Cillian Murphy does
June Diane Raphael.
Yep, does a wonderful job. in the movie, and I think he's great. He's great in a lot of Nolan stuff.
He's good at playing a slightly quirky guy.
Yeah, everyone should check out Peaky Blinders too, which he's also wonderful on.
Mm-hmm. And also, I think this made me realize Christopher Nolan loves him and Michael Caine because
they're in everything.
They're in everything he does pretty much.
But so I found it in that way. They did a very good job of setting up a very compelling origin story. But I think one of the reasons it works so well is because the way that it's set up, we start with Bruce Wayne going through the Ra's al Ghul's training and all that stuff, and at no point do we feel like that Ra's al Ghul is going to come back and attack again or anything like that. But we're spared having to do too much villain setup because it's all also a part of Bruce Wayne's journey. Yeah. Which is one of the reasons I do think it's very effective.
I gotta ask, because you've read more Batman comics than me. I love superheroes, but I've read very few comics. Were you aware of Ra's al Ghul before seeing this movie back in the day?
Yeah, but I mean, the Ra's al Ghul from the comics is like a very different thing.
Right, but
there's all the Lazarus Pit stuff and the immortality.
They do a kind of tribute to that in Rises, which we'll get to. But I think he also has the idea that the Ra's al Ghul is a title that gets passed down in this series. Yeah. And he also has, the fake... Because I was not aware, so I was actually surprised when Ducard, the Liam Neeson character, is revealed to be Ra's.
Right, yeah.
Because they even do a fake out because he's still got a dummy, like what's the word?
Stand-in?
A stand-in just to keep throwing off that illusion, and then when he reveals himself to Bruce. So that actually was an effective twist for me, and they kind of do pull a similar thing in Rises, which we'll get to. Also, I just love Liam Neeson in general. And it's kind of cool with him seeing both the mentor and then become the mastermind. And what are some other things I want to talk about with this? Is there anything you want to say while I'm going through my list of things? Okay, I got some stuff, but there's some good individual moments in it too. One thing that the first two emphasize that Rises doesn't do due to just the structure of his plot is the mob influence, like the Falcone family. And one of my favorite parts is because Bruce starts out very rash and reckless, like he's going to go in with a gun, and of course Falcone is so used to that. Not only he doesn't even just toss him out, he sits him down and just flaunts his power. Yeah. Just to do the voice parts like you can do nothing to me, and then throws him out. And the fact that he robbed Bruce of his revenge with Joe Chill, and though I'll bet I think one interesting thing is this. I think this series technically pushes Batman's no-kill rule that's in some media harder than the others, but there's still a point he kills one person in each movie.
Yeah.
It begins, technically the whole, because I know this bugged people with his last word to Ra's, I won't kill you, but I don't have to save you. And I'm like, if they were going to go the full hog, then he would probably just grab him and dump him off at the GCPD.
Yeah.
It didn't bug me that much. Dark Knight, at the end, he kills Two-Face. Which I get, actually, because in the situation. And in Rise, it's blinking.
He doesn't kill Two-Face on purpose, though, either. It's not like a murder. Like, they both go flying down the...
You get it. And Rise, it's blink and you miss it when he shoots the truck driver with Talia in the end. And that I get, where if you don't do this, everybody is nuked. But I think that's cool. That's probably something like that... it doesn't compare to Batman vs. Superman, like how much debate that kind of aspect will be handled. Because that does not... they just went, no, he's a serial killer. But... That's an interesting thing. And so how do you feel about Christian Bale as both Bruce and Batman in this?
I think Christian Bale as Bruce Wayne does a very good job. I think he's a little bit more tortured and he's a little bit more angsty than we're allowed to see. But
I do like the fact we still get the moments of him playing up the fake aspect, like he crashes Harvey's party and stuff.
Yeah, and it's actually kind of reminiscent of he goes a little American Psycho in it, where it's you see the fake aspect of that kind of come out in his but it's nice because I actually do think of Christian Bale. One thing he does have a real talent for is
screaming at guys when they walk in front of the light on set.
Sure, that's not what I was going to say, but that's absolutely
fuck's sake,
true.
Man, you're amateur.
I think he's got a real talent for portraying very tortured people who are putting up a fake persona.
He got an Oscar for basically doing that in The Fighter.
Yeah,
and where he also lost 80 pounds to look like a meth addict.
That was The Machinist.
I think it was both movies. Oh. Where he lost a lot of weight. I didn't see The Machinist. That's another Nolan one. I guess was that in between Begins and Dark Knight? Because he always
Between and Dark Knight we had The Prestige.
Okay, and then in between Dark Knight and Rises, we had Inception, where he fell in love with Tom Hardy and added him to his "You Got to Be in Every Movie" thing. A few other things I want to talk about. One thing that I will always be mad at. Well, you're not mad at, but one thing I will always bring up because a lot of people have to. Some of the action scenes in this are shot really poorly. Like
It begins.
It begins. Mainly, I always think of the temple fight when things go bad with him in the League of Shadows. There's just they do a lot of in this movie a lot of real quick close up cuts of like, well, here's the battle right now, here's his fist, and it's just it can be very hard to follow if you don't go back and rewatch it. And thankfully, I think Nolan took this to heart. The fights in the sequels are a lot more pulled back, constant shots, and you get a much better idea. Like imagine watching the Bane fights and having no idea what's going on. That would suck.
Yeah, well, I know that there was something I heard joked about a lot was and they even reference it in Dark Knight. When Batman talks about wanting to be able to turn his head, is that even for stunt doubles and stunt fighters, it is very hard to fight in these costumes.
And I believe Dark Knight was the first movie to actually do that.
To have him turn his head?
Even in the in the Schumacher and Burton movies, none of the costumes were capable of that.
Yeah.
And I think they reached a point where Nolan was like, no, we need to address this.
Yeah.
Which was smart, because the redesigned costume in the sequels look good too.
Looks great.
Kind of the plates and stuff.
Of course I missed the nipples from the Batman and Robin costume, but other than that, yeah, I think it's a really good improvement.
Anyway,
Yep.
Oh, and I will also talk about this year was my introduction to the concept of Lucius Wright. I mean, no, Fox. Who's Lucius Wright? What am I talking about? Lucius Fox is it's a fun character. I like the idea of having one more person on the inside about what's up with Bruce and Batman. It also kind of helps explain like the tech.
Yep, there's like a little bit of a need for that, and there is like because it does eliminate that like the weird need to have Bruce be like a technological genius.
I mean, in a lot of both Batman things, I'm still like, who built the Batcave? You know, he had to hire somebody to build all this shit, and they're just like, it's for other stuff. I'm for watching TV.
Yep, fair enough.
And you get fun stuff with it, like in Dark Knight with the we'll get to that. I think But anything else you want to say about Begins?
Well, I do think that rolling into Lucius, one thing I will say that I was very hesitant of when I first saw it, but grew to love, is the Tumbler Batmobile.
Yeah, I don't hate it, but I feel like that classic design from the Burton and cartoon is kind of hard to beat as Batmobiles go. And you will notice they moved away from it in the sequels. I think they were conscious about the backlash too. But it gets the job done. I do like the chase they have with it.
Yeah, I mean, I pretty much like all the Tumbler scenes in the movie, and then I think, to address it, when they wanted something like a little bit more fast-paced and less explosive, they did introduce the Bat Cycle, which was dope.
I thought it was Batpod.
Is it the Batpod?
Well, I mean, the iPod was big at the time, so maybe.
So, okay, great. So, the Apple-sponsored Batpod.
I like everything about the Tumbler except its bulkiness. I can leave it at that. But it took a bullet/rocket for Harvey Dent, and I'll be forever grateful for that.
Yep.
It politely said goodbye to Bruce while he was ejecting. It was a nice car.
Yeah.
Very kind.
Great
hearted.
attitude.
And last thing I'll say is, I just remember when I saw this with you and Dad. It might have been my second time. This movie is a cool thing of doing a sequel tease, but still wrapping up everything. So if it hadn't done well, you wouldn't be left like, well, it's unfulfilled. Where it's like Gordon is, it also ends with Batman and Gordon. You kind of get the sense they're finally starting to build that camaraderie. Mm-hmm. Also, major shout-outs. This is my go-to when I think of Commissioner Gordon.
Yeah.
I mean, Gary Oldman's a good actor in particular, but he looks the part too. It's kind of, as much as I love J.K. Simmons, I don't know if he's going to be able to top that, especially with the kind of scripts DC's cast nowadays.
Yeah.
But just the fact I remember that watching it in the theater, and you get that line, he goes, "He's a calling car," and I pull it out. I started clapping, and you just like pulled my arm, and like, cut it out.
Yeah,
we're in a theater.
It's interesting. I think the what the ending to that movie does and the beginning of Dark Knight does so well is that it doesn't. It sets us up to expect the Joker and to know that, and really to know at the end of that movie that like the greater like Batman universe might be coming into this a little bit more. Exactly. But one thing it does really, really well is it doesn't make it too big of a deal at the end.
Yeah.
And then when the second movie starts, when Dark Knight starts, we're in a position where
we're ready.
Well, we're ready, but also I think even like more importantly, Batman for like the first third of the movie is not that focused on the Joker. He's not that worried about him.
He's still rising.
He's working with the mob, and he's working to fight the mob
and help out Harvey Dent,
and help out Harvey Dent, which he's seeing as a much bigger problem at the time. And I actually believe that in his dealings with like realizing that these single insane people with a crazy amount of
they can overpower if they have the following.
If they have the following, or if they have just the ability.
The following part that's an even bigger aspect of Rises.
Yeah, which I think is why we see Batman then take Bane as seriously as he does, like right from the beginning, right? Because he's learned from the Joker.
Let's move on to Dark Knight, and I'm about to. I honestly, this might be where I gush the most since Iron Giant, because this I love this movie so goddamn much.
And I can say right from the beginning that I love the opening of this movie so much, with just the bank robbery and the
mini
masks,
heist movie.
The mini heist movie that takes place, and you just see the guys get killed off one by
Just
one
turning
by
on
one.
each other.
And it is just great, all the way down to Will Fichtner delivering like a great scene to right as Heath
Also,
Ledger's Joker is revealed.
For the first... Yeah, he didn't... man, good thing Joker killed the bus driver, or we wouldn't have a movie.
Yeah, right?
What bus driver? Also, I just love the fact the first time watching it, when he puts that little thing in Fichtner's mouth, you're like, oh god, what's going to happen? You're going to walk out and see us, but that's just him about practical joke.
Yep.
That's like, this Joker is like much more of a sadist, and he doesn't use any of the outlandish stuff that classic Joker does. Like, he's about knives, guns, I think he even says at one point, gasoline, matches.
I'm a man with simple tastes.
Yeah, but just what a fascinating character study you get in this one movie. And also, how ironic is it, the one major villain who doesn't get killed off, they literally couldn't bring back.
And it's, but it's interesting, they still do find the time to make sure that he is still... I mean, he's still very funny at points in the movie.
Oh, like,
I mean,
you think he just steal from us? Yeah.
Here's like when he leaves his business card and it's just the Joker. Like,
yeah,
that is super funny.
And he's got like a cartoon pull string grenade. He looks like,
oh yeah. And I also think, I mean, as like totally messed up and like crazy as it is, the making the pencil disappear moment.
Did you see that movie opening weekend?
Yeah.
I wish audience reaction to YouTube were a thing back then, because that was an amazing reaction, like screams and applause and laughter all at once. Like, what a great way to establish this Joker.
Yeah.
It is funny, but also just horrific.
Oh, yeah, it's crazy.
And it's amazing how much Nolan gets away with PG-13 ratings the last two movies. Like, I would not show those to young children. They are terrifying at many points.
Yeah, I think... I really do.
That's another thing that makes Begins more unique. It feels a little more like general audiences. Mm-hmm. It's still dark, but you probably had a small chance of traumatizing 5-year-olds.
Yeah, I think that's very true.
This, I think he probably got more clout after the success, and he was able to get away with more and see how much he could push it. And one of the things that people like to point out about Dark Knight and to a degree Rises is that they aren't conventional superhero movies. They are crime, thriller, suspense movies with Batman in them.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what's interesting about them, is they really don't take on like there's no like costume obsession or like power or like there aren't a lot of action for action's sake scenes.
It's a world, but also Batman himself. He's like one of the only famous superheroes who doesn't have any actual powers.
Right.
He has the training, he has the money and the gadgets, and he just has the know-how for that kind of thing. And that makes this kind of movie perfectly, because a lot of it is him trying to track down the Joker with all these crazy gadgets.
And I will say on top of all this, as I said about, I think Begins is particularly wonderful as a great origin story movie. I think Dark Knight succeeds in a very different, very difficult way that we rarely see superhero movies succeed in, and that is having more than one villain. They do a great job at having multiple villains in this movie, and I think let's talk about Heath Ledger deserves all the credit in the world for the Joker, but I don't think Aaron Eckhart gets enough credit for how
he is
great
really
Harvey
good
Dent was.
For man, I always think about this stuff with him in the hospital. Like, they do that silent scene when he realizes that Rachel is dead, and he's just having spasms. It's so powerful. And I remember every time I was watching the movie with someone for the first time, when he goes, "Say it, say it," and they just go like, "Oh God."
Oh yeah, and I will say, I feel like before the movie happened, I somehow saw an image of like what his face looks like after
when it becomes Two-Face.
When it becomes Two-Face, and I didn't like it, but when I saw it in the movie in action, I was pretty thrilled about it.
Because interesting to note, Nolan uses very minimal CG in his movies, and that applies to this too. I think even all the vehicle stuff, you can look up like the jet chases in Rises was using practical props on like a crane, and they would green screen out the crane or something in post. Huh. And obviously, I feel like if you wanted a really effective Two-Face, you got to do CG, and it's effective.
Oh,
it's horrifying looking.
I mean, I think one of the greatest like Two-Face like seconds is when he's in the bar with that cop and he takes the shot and has to wipe some of the shot off the side of his face as it's come through his cheek.
They said you were dead. Half. The actually interesting thing is both it's kind of true to Two-Face, but it's also its own unique thing, because I think one thing the movie does really well that a lot of other things, like the Schumacher skipped over, is that Harvey Dent was a really cool and good friend of Bruce before things went tits up for him. And you get much more of Harvey Dent than you do of Two-Face, and that makes his turn all the more effective and tragic. And it's also the fact that his motivation becomes different, because in the comics, he went on and he became, kind of a corrupted gangster lord. In this, you get the feel like he's only after those who he thinks, like, he's gone crazy, but he's only after those who he thinks are to blame for what happened to him and Rachel. And you notice at the end, like, when that final thing, Gordon's the last one, he thinks, and he hears that the cops are called. He's like, you think they want to escape from this? There is no escape. Like, he was probably going, and like he does the coin flip for himself to see if he's going to shoot himself. Like, he had a very short term span as Two-Face, regardless of what happened with that man.
Yeah, I mean, I think that one of the things that's interesting about him is that he doesn't have. There is no long game for him.
And wait for him in the next movie. Like, people thought that's what it was going to be. Like, end with Two-Face being created, and then like third movie about that.
Right, and I think what's interesting is so there's not like that whole like crime lord like rise thing, but there's also not like there's like this idea in a lot of other Batman material that he like flips a switch and like goes insane. When the Two-Face things happen to him, and Aaron Eckhart's Two-Face like isn't insane. He's someone who is just pushed to like to kind of evil limits.
He does kind of lose it toward the end when like what he's doing to Gordon, like he crosses a moral line, but it's because he feels like he's justified after something really, really awful happened to him.
Right, but yeah, I think it's like it's a little bit different than the Two-Face.
You kind of get it.
Yeah,
he's not just crazy, but he's motivationally awful, but I also like the fact that it's a one and done deal. Though I do remember for years before Rises was out, people were wondering if he was actually dead, because you do see his funeral, but they don't confirm that he's a corpse at the end. I remember when I read when Aaron Eckhart was doing a promotion for something else, the first thing he said on the stage was, "Let me just say that Harvey Dent is dead." Like, he has confirmed, like, no, they're not calling me back. They killed him off.
Well, Jon Snow did that during a Comic-Con panel, and he lied.
Well, Aaron Eckhart did not lie. He was in his Harvey Dent mode, not Two-Face mode. But also, just other things to talk about with. Let's talk about Ledger. Let's talk about Joker a little more. Now, to be fair, I feel like there's very few things left we can say that haven't been said, but it really is that momentous. It's monumental. I'm sorry.
It's just the most like memorable and just totally devotedly fun like monster, but also just like, wow, it's just there's something about like all the little idiosyncrasies with Joker, all the way down to like him licking his lips all the time, that make him such a complete villain.
Yeah, and props to Ledger for a lot, because I just read I dug up some old interviews. One of the best scenes of it is when the first time he and Batman meet face to face during the interrogation. Ledger had Bale like legit hit him.
Ugh.
He was committed, and also they asked Bale about the licking his lips. He said basically part of the makeup for the cut lip, the scarred lips, was prosthetics that would sometimes peel off his lip, and he would lick them back into place. And he decided to incorporate that into the character. It's just an odd tick,
huh?
And it adds to it, just like
it does add a lot.
It's just so weird, and man, one of my favorite moments. The whole interrogation scene is great, but like when they add a whole new underlevel when like they realize that Rachel's involved, and that took me by surprise too. Her death, that would be like killing off Lois Lane. In this kind of movie. Like, I did not see that coming. But just the fact that Batman is beating the shit out of him, and he gives that great line, he's just laughing, like, Bane doesn't seem to faze him that much, but then he like points out, like, you have nothing to threaten me with. You have all this strength, you just be beating on me, I have total control over you. And even then, when he tells them where they are, you notice he switches the addresses.
Yeah.
So people are confused, were like, he said he was going for Rachel, why did he hit with Harvey? Because Joker was still fucking with them. And, but I know that a few other things to talk about with it. One of my favorite, both this and Rises do some of my favorite things with like its villain's musical motif, and from very different ends of the spectrum. Because you notice a lot of stuff when Joker is building up to something, or when something is building up to something, they have that one held violin string just gradually rising and rising and rising. And props to Hans Zimmer, like that is ingenious. Because the first time I saw that, like it is such a tense movie.
Yeah,
maybe the tensest I've ever watched, because I was so invested in it, and because if the first time you watch it, it's hard to tell where it's going about things.
Yeah,
other than knowing you're gonna get Two-Face, like you don't know what Joker's plan is, and he proves up till the end, even to just be ahead of the game, and even then he still was a little bit ahead because of what he did to Harvey.
Well, and the fact of the matter too is it's actually kind of fascinating the way Joker goes out at the end, because he. Even when Batman, captures him or strings him up, like
you'll be in a jail cell.
He hasn't like destroyed him at all. Like, Joker is still upside down, laughing, like he's
well, this Joker is, I'm pretty sure he does not feel fear, because remember, there's that point where the first time you talk, you think he's killed him for a second. He throws him off the building, kind of Burton style, and Joker's just laughing. He's doing the hoo, 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 like, this is fun.
Yeah.
Like, Joker doesn't, also couldn't, let's see, offers to probably shoot him. To like, make more anarchy. He does not give a shit about his safety or life, because his ideal is, he goes into it in the interrogation scene, and when he's with Harvey, like, when one contradiction to the movie is like he said he doesn't have plans. He does, but his end goal is not a concrete thing. He's like, I'm like a dog chasing a car. I wouldn't know what to do with one if I actually caught it. All he wants to do is, like, he's convinced that people's morality at their core can be the same as his, and he wants to make Gotham be like him. Ultimately, that backfires with the boats, but he comes close.
There's like it seems like a simplification, but it's not. And there's that amazing monologue from Michael Caine in this movie, where he talks about, those gems that he let. Thank you.
And probably at least the most famous Alfred line.
And it's some people just want to watch the world burn, and it's funny because you have to like that is like the thesis statement of the entire movie. Like, at the end of the day, Joker doesn't have like some.
He burns all his money.
Yeah,
he kills all the mob bosses.
Yep.
Like, that's not a villain approach you see in many movies.
No.
You're generally either someone who's power hungry or has like a vendetta against someone. Like, we just watched Captain America Civil War last time. That's a unique Marvel villain, that he just has a vendetta. Also, I gotta say that 5 minutes before it ended, during the last fight, our mom just turned to us and just matter of factly, this is sad.
This is sad.
She turned into Mimi, basically.
But one thing I will say, just the last thing I'm going to touch on with Heath Ledger and Joker, is that I think, no matter what would have happened, this role would have gone down for a while. It's like extremely amazing. But something about going to see this movie,
that was part of the hype,
knowing that the actor had died, and there was also all that kind of BS around the fact that playing the Joker is what did it to him.
No.
Which just isn't really the case. But
accidental prescription overdose.
Yeah, and that's very sad, and I'm not trying to minimize this thing. But what I will say is, with all that hype and insanity around it, it almost made the Joker seem like
larger than life.
Yeah, like he was it was almost like the character had transcended further than this movie, and in that way, not that I would ever want this to happen again, it has made this character larger than most movie characters could ever be.
I feel like my admiration would still be the same for him if Ledger was alive, because now it just makes me sad that they want to do something with him in Rises. Like, obviously he wouldn't have been the main villain, but you could have seen him switching allegiances, like Catwoman style.
Oh, probably. And I'm not, I'm certainly not happy Heath Ledger's dead. No. I'm just saying that I think it does. There is something about this happening that does color your feelings during the movie.
That's true, and it is worth noting. I remember the moment this movie blew up. Because also worth noting, Nolan had with each movie he did not have a sequel completely. He was like, I'll consider it, but I have no concrete plans. He was kind of winging it with each one and seeing where it would go and how he felt. And because he knows he would do movies in between too, because in between this and Rises he did Inception, and met half the cast of Rises.
Yeah.
And so we talk about Begins has a good cute little setup. Dark Knight, if it happened the last, you would have been left wanting a little more, but it's still just a fascinating note to end on with where Batman's position becomes and what is. We really touch on what he's become known for years later in Rises, and then how it affected Bruce Wayne. So just kind of interesting. But I do know he and Morris confirmed immediately if we do a sequel, no, we're not going to recast the Joker. We're not going to bring him back out of respect for Heath.
Yeah, I think that was the right thing to do.
It was. It would have just been distracting if they got Jared Leto in Rises.
Oh my god, I don't even want to talk about that.
I still haven't seen Suicide Squad.
It's trash.
Okay.
I will say another thing that I think is interesting. We are all, I think, pretty used to, if anyone's familiar with other Batman stuff, we're all pretty used to the idea of him being a vigilante who's blamed for a lot of the stuff around the city.
But he has some supporters, but he's a very divisive figure.
He's a divisive figure. And really up until the end of the second movie, he's not that way.
They're leaning towards him being a hero for everyone.
Yeah, and I think this movie does a very interesting thing and leading into the third movie that I actually kind of like.
Some people hate it. I do not.
That is when Batman becomes this villainous figure, like Bruce Wayne no longer wants to inflict him upon the city. He like takes the total brunt about it
that actually
and retires Batman.
Well, that actually was one thing I wish he'd seen a different approach within Rises, which was that he kept doing it, but it was thankless. But it still has some interesting. It has some it leads to interesting motivation. What they did in Rises about getting back in the game. Just the last thing I want to talk about with Dark Knight, and then we can move on to the final one. Actually, no. But I'll say my last thing. This movie is what sold me on Gordon. Begins already done a great job, but like I feel like he becomes increasingly integral with each entry. To a degree.
And actually, I would say this is actually a pretty good segue because Gordon gets a like he may not be in Rises quite as much, but he really gets his like characters like
his moment to shine. I'll get to know. I'll say it right now. I think the most badass Gordon moment in the entire trilogy is when he's on trial and it's like they're doing the death or exile thing. He's like, "No, I know what you're up to. Death. I'm gonna die like a man." And then Scarecrow fucks them. Death by exile.
Yeah.
But like I felt for him in this movie too. Like I was fooled when I first saw it because you think like midway through he's killed, but then it's a joyous moment when he comes back. And actually I should have seen it coming because you can hear the clip "Evening, Commissioner," and I forgot when he died he wasn't Commissioner yet. Oh man, that great scene when he kills like that when he's like all of Joker's assassinations in this are so effective. Like don't drink that, and then like the judge gets in the car up, just that look like huh. Oh my god, that video of him killing the costume Batman imposter, that's chilling.
I've heard that like the guy who was in that scene said like doing that with Heath Ledger like was scary.
When he just suddenly look at me, like that's one of the only times he gets that kind of voice.
Yeah,
it's so jarring and scary. So I did read like technically Heath Ledger directed that scene because that was him holding the camera, and they loved how it turned out. And the last thing I want to say about Joker,
I'm a man of my word.
I heard people point out his laugh is kind of similar to the Adam West version.
Oh, I don't know.
I think that's kind of how that Joker laughed.
Huh.
Obviously not the rest of the character, but I actually remember reading. Heath Ledger said that if they had wanted to do something, if they wanted him to the big. If they'd gotten Tim Burton back for another movie and wanted to recast the Joker, he wouldn't have done it because he admired Nicholson too much. But when they said there was a chance to do something fresh, that's what interested him because he didn't want to tread on the coattails. So good for him. But the last thing I'll say about Joker, one thing I'm actually glad this is one thing I had spoiled for me before I saw it. The fact that he keeps making up new origin stories, tying to the fact that at the end of the day you still have no idea where he came from or what made him that way. Because if I first walked in like, wait, all it was that his dad abused him, like it's kind of the thing people talk about with Anakin Skywalker. Like when you have such a great villain, it's hard to live up to with the origin,
which is maybe to anybody in the entertainment industry listening to this podcast.
Oh, I know what you're gonna say.
Why you shouldn't make a Joker origin movie?
But Scorsese might be involved, man.
Who cares? You cannot do like. There's no way they will write something like. I mean,
then get Jared Leto in young makeup. It'll be awesome, man.
Oh my god, what a disaster.
We'll always have Ledger.
Yeah. Well, no, we won't.
I mean, to go back to.
Yeah.
We still have Hamill.
Yeah.
But anyway, I think it does seem we spend the most time on Dark Knight. Surprise.
And just anybody out there, before we move on to Rises, I will say, if you have not ever in your life gone onto YouTube and watched any of the videos of Mark Hamill recording Joker's voices, like next to the animations, like where they split the screen, do it for yourself. It is so wonderful.
I know he's
to
also
watch.
been doing anything lately where he reads Trump's tweets in the Joker voice.
Yes, and that's amazing too.
Oh, perfect. But I feel like there's one more thing I wanted to say about going forward. But no, we can keep going. So now we get to The Dark Knight Rises, and I can sum it up in 2 words. Deshi. Basara. Deshi. Basara. Deshi. Deshi. Basara. Basara. Oh man, you're just looking at me like so judgmental. No, but seriously, one of the things I love most about that is you got the feeling that Zimmer didn't want to just recycle the motifs. So like each movie adds a motif. The first one had the general Batman theme. Mm-hmm. The second one was I brought up Joker's violin thing, and like I said, how that went for opposite angles with Bane. Like the thing I consider Bane's motif, and they played through a lot of the most intense moments, including the plane scene in the beginning and the climax, just when everything goes to shit. Is that that kind of like they have an orchestra, a whole orchestra rising, dun, 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 and then just pounding drums like. This is the most epic of the 3 movies. Like, you get the feeling that if Nolan was... Because Nolan said to me, like, this is when he was done. So he was like, I gotta go out, like, big.
Yeah, and one thing I really like about it is because they've done such a good job of grounding these movies, it's like, it doesn't suffer from like the Die Hard syndrome of it's like yes,
forcing it to be bigger.
Well, yeah, there's a nuke that could destroy Gotham in this movie,
right.
But at no point in this movie do I feel like it's jumped the shark like the Die Hard movies have.
No, and I'm gonna get into
the people are still like there's still like a lot of good like street level fighting, and it's all seems like a little bit more realistic in the way that it's set up, and it just makes a lot of it never feels like it's lost its thread.
Yeah, no, and I want to say, getting on, just really briefly touching also on Dark Knight, one of my coworkers at the movie theater, I stopped talking about the movies because he said, you know what, if Dark Knight didn't have the Joker, it would just be a standard crappy sequel. So if it didn't have what 90% of its story revolved around.
Yes, that's a non-argument.
Yeah, but Rise is, I have no doubt in my mind, this is the most divisive of the three. Not in terms of where people rank it, but just how they feel about it in general. Like, there are a lot of people who loved the first two and hated this. There are people who, I think you're kind of on more even terms, in terms of ranking. But for me, this is, I feel like Begins and Rises are on a pedestal of very good to great movies, and then Dark Knight is on a level just beyond everything. And it's kind of odd, but this is also, I think, for me, the most peaks and valleys of a movie in terms of what I love and hate most about it. Hate's kind of a strong word for the most part. But I kind of get why... this is one kind of movie where I won't argue with somebody who says they hate it or says they love it, because I can understand both, and I'm in the really like it camp.
Yeah, I mean, for myself, I think I'm in the really, really like it camp.
Yeah, no,
I like it a lot.
But
I would say I probably like it more than Begins, which I know is not the common thing, but I also... I will say I know that I'm in a very much smaller camp here, where I don't just like Tom Hardy as Bane. I love him. I think he's great. I love the voice. I love everything. And I'll get into it more.
That's the thing.
I'll get into it more, but
I wrote a list
love
here. I want to get my complaints out of the way, just so people who listen to this loving this think I want to get it out of the way so they won't be like, you hate this movie? No, I don't. I really like this movie.
Great.
But I'll start with that. Like, now part of the problem was like this was the most hyped after Dark Knight. How could it not be? Mm-hmm. And that's a hard act to follow, especially when you can't rely on Ledger anymore.
You're ready for me to debate every point you make, but yeah, go ahead.
You can if you want, but I'm not going to dwell on them because they didn't ruin the movie for me.
Sure.
Now, I was very interested in Bane because let's also not forget, Bane was technically in Batman and Robin, and that was a massacre. That was a character assassination.
Yeah.
To have him just be this big, dumb, heavy going, bomb, Bane. And granted, this movie takes a different approach to him, too. Also, kind of an under-the-radar whitewashing, because Bane is typically Hispanic and other stuff. But, so the Bane in the comics and other general media is kind of a mercenary / assassin for hire. And he is merciless and cold and jacked up. In those versions, because he's injected with like a venom, this thing called venom, which is like a super steroid. And this is because they established he was mutilated and he's on pain meds through the mask, kind of. This has Bane reimagined. I actually met someone who didn't like it because Bane was different in this. Here, Bane and, of course, his partner in crime, spoilers, Talia, are terrorist masterminds and who are they are literally from the same school of evil as Ra's al Ghul, but was excommunicated for being too nuts. And where Ra's al Ghul wanted to, kind of vaporize part of Gotham to teach its lesson, because they're all about technically a good cause or motivation to weed out the corruption and evil, but their idea of solving it is to kill all of Gotham, and that's of course what Batman's pointing out, like, you're willing to sacrifice millions. And so the fact that this established on a big scale, like, you get a lot of hints at how Bane and his crew has so much, they've weeded in. It's like the Hydra thing in S.H.I.E.L.D., like, so many people in Gotham now you can't trust, and that's what enables them to pull off something like. This movie is you kind of get the feeling it's divided into two halves structurally. Build up to when shit hits the fan, and then when shit really hits the fan. But let me get through my bad list first. I actually do like the character of Blake, the Josh going to love it, the Robin, quote unquote. He is Robin, but actually I remember because people had been asking Nolan, are you going to include Robin? He's like, I'm not going to include just the regular Robin as it is. I'd have to reinvent him, and he kept it secret. It's the last minute of that movie, and I do like Blake. He's a very noble. I love the fact that that part where they almost assassinate him, and you can see him, he's fucking terrified. Yeah. And it's so awesome when Batman comes up, just like, he is a true hero, and I don't feel bad that he's, spoilers, he inherits the mantle to some sort. I did not like the fact that he says he was able to tell as a kid that Bruce was Batman. I think that was, it was deal with.
Yeah, I think even I am a big defender of this movie. That was a little weak.
Because Bruce was not a genius as a kid. I get it, like Blake says he has like a kindred upbringing, but I don't know. They could have had a different way of him finding out. That's my only gripe with the character as a whole, though. Also, this does not handle romances with Bruce as well as all the Rachel stuff. They both feel very kind of out of nowhere, but also just rushed. Both Selena and Miranda.
Yeah, I believe that we could have had a. I think it was a mistake not to have Selena Kyle appear earlier in this series of films as maybe as a smaller role. I would have loved it if she'd played a small part,
and flirting with him early on,
maybe just being some kind of, even if she had appeared in the last movie as like a
Easter egg kind of thing,
a small Easter egg, or just someone like in a small scene, something like that, just so that it didn't all feel so slapdash.
Now, I get the impression she was interested in Bruce, but didn't like his morals. But I guess the problem is, for me, it comes off that he's more interested in just trying to guide her down the right path than, I'm in love with you. Mm-hmm. Like, I actually remember, I saw this opening night with our dad, and he actually didn't like it. This is his least favorite by far. And I remember there's that cool scene, the ballroom dance, where she's kind of hinting at what's about to come because she's in the know. But she runs off, and then she comes back and kisses him. I remember one guy in the corner of the audience just went, "What the fuck?" He didn't do it for Miranda, but that would set up a little bit more. He's trying to get the feeling they're a little interested in each other, but then it's like, they're banging.
Yeah, and I mean, it was kind of an interesting thing because it was well timed, like politically in the world too, because it was like right during Occupy Wall Street and like all the 1%,
90% rising up, but not handling it. But I'm not talking about the movie in general. I think some people could argue about that, but what happened with 99% does things the wrong way.
Yeah, but I will say, I do agree that both the Talia and the Selena Kyle thing both feel a little rushed. I will say one thing that I know a lot of people disagree with me on. I do think Anne Hathaway does do a very good job in this
the character
movie.
Selena Kyle, I think, is really fun in this because that's something that is key of Catwoman, not just the Batman. I'll admit I'm not a fan of the idea of them hooking up because I just feel like their morals are too greatly different. Granted, you get the feeling she's probably mellowed out by the end because he changed him. But in other media, like you've not played. I don't think you've played it yet, but I played the Telltale Batman series, and that gives you the option at one point: make out with Selena or just say no. And I went with no because.
Boo.
Yeah, I know, but I like her as a character, but I feel like Batman should be someone who has a bit more morals. But I guess you could argue that maybe like he has some repression in it. But that I don't want to have the whole discussion. Also, we should just rush through my complaints.
Rush through my complaints.
I don't want to be a downer. But the big one, I think the one that people will complain about, this movie has little plot holes out the ass. And it's kind of, I remember the first time I saw it, I was taken out for like a minute. Where, we get because I love all the stuff with the pit and we'll get to that. That's going to cut down to what I love. So he gets out, he's somewhere in India or whatever, then cut to Selena, and then he comes to the house, hey, I'm back. I'm like, I have several questions.
Yeah.
How did you get across the world with no money and being assumed dead? How did you sneak back into... He does show the exit, but that's the main one. Like, how transport, Bruce. Fill us in a little bit. I'm fine with not showing you shaving, because you had that Sharpie beard, and you got that, and Batman shouldn't have a beard.
I'm just less worried about that. It doesn't bother me very much.
And
I understand.
When I showed it to Mimi, she didn't even notice until I brought it up.
Sure.
And other little ones. Like, this is nitpicking, but the fact that... Gordon's the first to discover Bane's activities, and he name drops him, but nobody says Bane's name, and he had not heard of Bane until that happened. Like, You could have figured that with one word, then going, hey, Bane. That's a great scene. Like, you panicked. And probably some other ones I can't remember, but I'm not going to dwell on that. And also, another kind of a big one, they add a lot of new characters in this, and keep some of the old ones.
Yes, and this is one complaint I will agree with.
You still get a lot of Bruce. You don't get much Batman until a certain spot in the middle, and then none until the climax. Mm-hmm. I've heard people say that you could call this Gotham, the movie, because this feels more like an ensemble piece rather than riding Bruce Wayne's shoulders. Granted, he still has a lot of standalones on his own in an arc, but this is the least Batman-y of the trilogy because you don't get much Batman.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
And also, I was kind of sad that Alfred leaves like a third in.
Okay, so I'm actually going to stone cold disagree with you because I will say...
it jives with the motivation that he's got. But.
I think it jives with the motivation, and I think I love Michael Caine's scene when he says he can't.
And admits to Rachel's letter and stuff.
Yeah, and can't let him kill himself and all that stuff. But I will say, while it is a bummer, I love Michael Caine. I think he's wonderful. Mm-hmm. While it is a bummer to lose him for a lot of the movie, it is I mean, I know some people don't like the ending, but I think it's great. It is so rewarding to have him give that speech, and then you see him he's the last thing you see in the movie.
The last thing you see is Blake, but the last thing you see you see Bruce then out the last
thing you see of Bruce. I do believe that it pays off so well. It does, and I think that to me that negates the loss.
I could have dealt with it if we I guess we're just assuming he left Gotham, because you feel like otherwise you would have seen what he was up to during the whole crisis.
Well, if he was in Gotham, I think he would have found a way to get involved.
So yeah, he probably wasn't there.
Yeah, I think
they just don't go into it. It's less his story. And okay, let's just touch on what we were just talking about in the whole intro. The first time I saw this movie, I was mad hyped for Bane. I had just seen Tom Hardy in a movie we both enjoy, Warrior.
Mm-hmm. Warrior is a movie that everyone should go see.
Yes, it's a very underrated, good sports drama. I don't like sports, and I really love that movie. But he was in Inception, which is how Nolan formed his obsession with him, because now he's in Dunkirk as well. But that was a very small role. But I knew from Warrior, this guy can act. Bane's a cool character, and the teasers were getting... why did you just put your nose on my laptop?
I had an itch, and I didn't feel like lifting my hand.
I feel like it takes more effort to lean your head forward. Anyway, Tom Hardy... Yes, not all over my laptop, thanks. Yeah. But, so, they did an interesting... You kind of look back at those trailers. There's some great teasers and trailers for this. Like I said, building up that... They didn't show that much of Bane in terms of dialogue. I noticed the recordings they used were different in the trailer, too. So when I first saw the movie, and granted, that opening scene is also awesome, the plane stuff. I think that shows you what a much more epic and intense ride you're in for. Mm-hmm. But that first line, well, perhaps you do it.
I don't remember what it is.
Perhaps he's wondering why someone would shoot a man before throwing him from a plane. I was like, wait, what? That's the voice? Because it sounds like a much younger and much happier Sean Connery, kind of. Like a gentleman. And I remember listening to Kevin Smith review this movie on his podcast. He said that it had to be intentional because it was kind of defying expectations. So granted, I'll give him that. But the first time I saw this movie, I had trouble paying attention to his dialogue because, especially when he gets high-pitched, oh, yes, this bomb is mobile. I was just so taken out that I could not focus on Bane. Then I rewatched the movie and was used to the voice. Bane's awesome in this. Mm-hmm. Almost everything he says is quotable, and it doesn't feel like he's retreading either the previous films either. His goal may be the same as Ra's, but the way he presents himself is very different. Yeah, I mean, I think Bane is different because he one thing I really love about Bane is that I think they did a great job of not trying to recreate the magic of the Joker. That would have been the worst thing to do, I feel. Yeah. Because everybody thought they were going to do the Riddler. Yeah, and I feel like the Riddler could have turned out to be I think Nolan even said that's why he wouldn't do Riddler. Yeah, and I think they did a great job at finding a very different kind of villain, because unlike the Joker, he has a clear plan with a clear end game. Yes, he's the ultimate suicide bomber. Yeah, and it's pretty unbelievable. But in terms of the voice, to be totally honest, I think it's great. I like it a lot. I like it now. And I think it's like a little it's a bit fascinating, and it kind of leans into there is this part of Bane that exists that does have kind of a grandiose sense of self. When he usually walks around with a coat and he's popped up, his hands propped up like this. Yeah, he knows he's larger than life and kind of flaunts it. Yeah, he's like a bit of a show off, and I kind of love it. The fact that when he exposes himself to Gotham when things go down, he's got a very grand speech planned out. One of the best parts, his speech during the breakout, when you see how the next things are going to change, it's epic, and speech is a big part of what makes it. And the fact that he can't shut up while he's beating the crap out of Batman in that scene in the sewer is a real, I think, clear sign of Bane's he's cocky as all hell, but he has reason to be. He has reason to be, but he's not he's not some modest no. Anything. He's been well aware of Batman and been ready for what's about to happen. That first time. So Tom Hardy, I mean, this is just worth talking about a little bit. Tom Hardy based the voice of the character off of a famous bare knuckle boxer. Not Bronson. No. A bare knuckle boxer who had a very similar voice, but also was a huge dude. Not even huge. He was just a very conceited, but very Yeah. Tom Hardy isn't huge, height wise. I guess he's above average, but not gigantic. But he's ripped. Oh yeah, I mean him and Bronson, him in this. Yes, he gained a bunch of muscles for Bronson. He gained more for Warrior, and he gained more for this. Yeah, it's unbelievable. It's also interesting how much he's able to moat because I know people complain this is you only see his eyes.
Yeah, and I will say, I think that's actually one of the other reasons I like the voice so much.
Because he has to rely on it.
Because, yeah, he has to lean into... You get... Because, I mean, he does a lot of great stuff with his eyes.
And his body language. I love the fact that, like, when the doctor's like, I said nothing. I mean, just said that slow. Like, that's your ass.
Yeah. I think, we gain a lot of clarity of purpose through his voice. So, I think... At the end of the day, I understand why people think it's like over the top or like a little bit dumb. And I also understand there's a lot of people who are upset that they've changed the character of Bane so much from the comic. But at the end of the day, for myself, in like a lot of movies, in like a lot of the Marvel movies, I'll go and be very excited to see like my stuff from the comics. But I don't approach the Nolan Batman movies that way. I'm here to see a brand new thing that kind of is pulling from source material, but is really doing its own thing.
Now, did you have any prior memories of Bane from the comics, cartoons, or
certainly from the cartoons?
Yeah, he's pretty cool in the cartoon.
A little bit in the comics.
We're not counting Batman and Robin.
Yeah, I'm not counting Batman and Robin because fuck that.
He was the Killer Croc of his day.
Ugh. I think
one of the best lines in Lego Batman. Yeah, he actually did something.
I think. I think Bane in the comics was always cool just because he was like...
He still had the swagger to him.
Yeah, he still had the swagger, and he still had like the, he is like almost unbeatable.
This added criminal mastermind / psycho master terrorist on top of
made him a little smarter.
And
I also, we I think an image that's going to always stick with every comic book fan in the world is Bane breaking Batman's back over his knee.
The moment he was announced as the villain, that's what everybody was counting on, because it's his most famous act in the comics.
Yeah, and if you've ever read that comic, it's an unbelievable like set up and fight to it. Yeah,
he basically puts Batman through, sets a gauntlet up, so Batman's fighting a bunch of villains, so he just doesn't stand a chance by the time he fights them.
But it's
in this case, Batman's out of practice.
Yeah, but I mean, even then, it's like we're kind of like led to believe that even like Batman at his best might not be able to have beaten Bane in the sewer. Who knows?
He has to train, and also the fact that he's thankfully able to learn Bane's weak point.
Yeah.
He punches him in the face like 2 or 3 times, but he has to do it like, to be fair, he has to do it like a dozen times before getting the pipes loose.
Yeah.
And he still gets the shit kicked out of him before that.
Yeah.
But I actually do want to touch on, I think I brought this up, Dark Knight and Rises, for each movie, one of the most intense action scenes is almost entirely free of music. The truck chase scene in Dark Knight, I'm not sure what the vibe is, but it actually does. I feel like make it feel more personal.
Yeah,
this is Harvey life is really on the line. It gets it gets it's like retroactively more triumphant when you realize Gordon was helping out the whole time with the masked one. Mm-hmm. And this is the first scene, and I remember reading up to the first time like that is the most depressing fight scene in a Batman movie. Batman cannot face his motherfucker and just keeps cutting to like Catwoman and his crony just looking down on the fight like. Yeah, Batman, you suck. And it's just... And then actually notice they bring back the violin string right into the last second of building up to the back break. Because that's when you know what's about to happen. Like, it's effective.
So let's talk Talia.
Okay, I wish she was in a little more as Talia. Mm-hmm. But, I mean, I like Marion Cotillard in general, so that's kind of a gimme she gets.
This was one big bummer for me, is that somehow, days before the movie came out, IMDb... I was just going to look up... I forget what I was going to go look up, but I was looking up the movie on IMDb.
And they put out set photos.
And no, they put out... next to her character name, it said... It had her character's name / Talia al Ghul.
There were set photos put of her riding one of the Batmobiles, but I guess that still could have meant anything.
Could have meant anything, but no, I knew she was
she sold as like an
Talia.
ally in the fight up till...
And that was kind of a bummer, because I never got to experience that reveal.
Granted, I did, but there had actually been a ton of speculation up to that point.
Oh.
Like, there were a lot of people wondering, like, what is the significance? Like, okay, we have Catwoman as the female lead love interest. If there's this other one, it's possible she could be. And they hint at it early on, where, like, after the section she has the tattoo. But the movie, she says, like, my family's been plagued with a lot of things. But the movie does a good job of making you forget because they throw so much else at you that I was genuinely surprised. And if you don't know, it's a good moment of, like... Because I remember thinking, like, the idea of Bane being the son of Ra's al Ghul, I thought, that's kind of lame. That's a little... too tied to it, but what they end up with is a lot cooler because it added a little more of a tragedy to it. Where Bane wasn't really asking me because he was crazy; it was because he reminded Ra's too much of the loss that he'd gone through, and Bane was kind of a victim to that regard. And the fact that they actually, you get that brief moment, like, Bane's kind of tearing up when he's telling this, like, you get, like, there is a genuine, it's not even a loving thing. They are, like, comrades for life.
I mean, I think he loves her.
Like a daughter. Because you get that flashback of her as a kid, and also the one scene where you get, like, his unmasked face, goodbye. I was like, there's Tommy from Warrior. But it's kind of a sweet, but it is barely touched on. Then they have to rush into. I know a lot of people hated how Bane got taken out, but I wasn't that upset because you kind of got, like, that epic fight was kind of already, like, you got the sense of defeat. He was already kind of pathetic by that point.
He got beaten beforehand.
Yeah. I think what annoys people is that it doesn't make it explicitly clear whether she was the head or if it was a tag team kind of thing. I think that's what bugs a lot of people.
I think she was the head.
I think that's what bugs people.
I guess that never really bothered me.
It didn't bother me, but I get that, like, you're led to think Bane is the head honcho, and then he was second head honcho. I'm like, he still did a lot. He still did a lot.
Yeah, I think they probably worked in unison a lot. It does kind of seem like she was.
She orders him at the end, like, shoot him or like keep him here while, and then he still goes against her orders.
Yeah.
I mean, I've heard people the first time they see that, like, when the gunshot goes off, you freak out for a second. Do you think it's him shooting Batman?
Yeah.
And man, he is dead. He is quite dead. But I want to get into the other things that I love about this movie. I think what this movie has above the others and most other movies, I think this is one of the most effective movies in building up and then establishing how dire this situation is. Like, man, what a ride you're in for once. Like, I'll tell you, like, from the moment, like, the games begin, click, holy shit.
Yeah.
Like, just bam, 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 just taking everything out. Police are gone.
Joker literally grabbing a plane and ripping the wings off of it mid-air.
I'm talking, I mean, that's a great thing to show. Like, that and, like, the stock stuff, they're a good thing to show you. And then, like, do you feel in charge? But this is, like, when it's time to affect all of Gotham. Like, the fact that Joker keeps trying to kill the mayor and can't do it, and Bane, because he has men on the inside, is bam. That's like, that doesn't even matter to him. It's just like, no, I'm going to. And the fact, I saw people complaining, like, why did he want to keep them alive for so long if he's going to blow them up? And he talks about, like, it's easy to miss, in the prison speech scene to Bruce, he's talking about, like, suffering. Like, he's going to make Gotham suffer and drag it out with that false hope. Mm-hmm. And then he's going to kill them anyway to show that their suffering was for naught. He wanted to make everyone suffer. Like, that's fucked up. And just, like, even with just when you keep cutting back to, because the movie is kind of flashing between the pit and what's going on in Gotham. Man, I remember when they do the thing with, like, those mercs come in to try and save him. Mm-hmm. He kills them. It's like, hang them where everyone can see them. And that shot of their nooses hanging on the bridge with the music. Dun, 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 dun. I'm like, holy shit, Batman, hurry up. It's so good.
Speaking of which, I will say one of the best scenes I love in like a superhero movie that is not actually like a fight between the superheroes is the moment when the police charge on the inmates in the street.
It's already pretty good, but you know they're going to get slaughtered. Then at the last second, bam, I disable their cannons. Go for it. Like,
it's unbelievable.
I've seen YouTube comments I bet there are plenty of ISIS cheering that on. Because, like, normally I'd be like, well, I don't really know these cops that well outside of the one who's hesitant and Gordon's elsewhere. But I was like, no, go for it. You got this.
And I actually do feel that, like, they do a pretty solid job because they cave all those police in underground.
Yeah. I'm just talking about on an individual basis.
No, I know, but they do, like, a good job of making
you feel bad for them.
Making you feel bad for them, but also, like, making
there's still probably some crooked ones down there, but, like, Jesus.
Yeah.
And just that whole climax.
Oh yeah,
fucking epic. And just they do a good job of balancing stuff where it's like you got Gordon in the things you got. I love what they're doing with Blake. Like, get them out of the city. Why? In case we fail. And man, just I love how even see, like, once the fight has really kicked off, you've got him, telling the orphan kids where to go, so that it's a battle. You still got that dun 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 dun. Like, you're not losing that tension. You're not losing that momentum and that, like, go get him attitude. Like, it's a make or break moment for everyone involved, and it's just such a great way to like raise the stakes and cap things off like never before in the series.
Yeah.
Also, a quick thing, I like the fact that what we talked about, the lies that are set up at the end of Dark Knight come back to bite him in the ass. Like, Alfred didn't want to admit the letter from Rachel, and that's part of what gets him to leave. And then, the whole Dent act, like the fact that everything is based on the lie of Dent dying a hero, and Bane uses that to advantage. I love the fact that he gets the letter, he saves it for later, and you know it, you're like, when he's going to, then bam, like that. Man, that whole montage, like the prison breakout, just like setting fire to building, but like, Jesus, it's terrifying.
Yeah.
And like, courts will be held. That's one of the great scenes of establishing, like, this is not even just Bane either. This has become a true force to be reckoned with. Because Joker's army wasn't that big, but this is insane. And, like, everybody is truly powerless unless Batman can figure something out. And it's just, it's wonderful. That is so wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, Bane inspires this groups in ways that Joker didn't.
The fact that they're willing to die for him. At the beginning, like how we started a fire, we put to find one, and the fact that those two, he's like, I'm going to kill you, and they sit around, they don't flee, they sit around and wait for it. Like, yeah, I screwed up. Like, they're devoted.
Right. Where more as like Joker's people. I mean, they talk about the fact when Harvey Dent before when he is interrogating the insane person in the back of the ambulance.
Oh yeah, I thought he looks like Cillian Murphy. I kind of thought, was that Scarecrow?
yeah, I actually thought that too.
That was a good scene to establish the coin. Like you're leading up to the luck, not exactly.
And it's also it was a good scene to establish what.
At the time, Harvey Dent did have his limits. He wanted to put up the illusion that he did.
Yeah, but it did show his darker side a little bit.
A hint of what would happen when he got rid of the limits.
Exactly.
Also, what else did I want to talk about? I think I brought up most of what I love, but how do you feel about the ultimate fate of Batman and Bruce Wayne? Because I feel like that was divisive.
If it was a comic book series, or if it was a
Arkham Knight kind of pulls this. Spoilers.
If it was kind of like if it was
because I was wondering and debating with people up till they're saying the end, they even put in the trailer you've given everything to the city, not everything, not yet. I'm sure they were hyping up the mystery. Are we going to kill him? Yeah. And I was imagining a scene where Bane dies and then Batman gets mortally wounded or something. They didn't do something straightforward. To be fair, I was hoping I would cry when it happened. I guess because it happened so suddenly. No autopilot, gotta get in, bye. But I do love the fact that little Batman's last line is bringing everything full circle. Do you remember? Because Gordon's still I'm still never gonna know who you are, and it's a hero can be anyone. Even someone's doing something simple as putting a coat on a young boy's shoulders. I know the world, and that's how Gordon realizes that's cute.
Yeah,
I mean, it's not just cute, but it's cathartic.
Yeah, I think they do a great job. One of the reasons I like is that I don't feel like. I feel like it ends well because we got to see in this world Batman's whole story. There will be, there will
be someone else after him.
Yeah, Blake
possibly
might
Robin.
Might become the new Batman.
And Bruce Wayne and Batman are legally dead.
But we got to see. I feel like it does something that not many superhero series do. We saw the whole thing.
Yeah. Well, I know what people think. I remember people complaining Batman doesn't quit. Because that's the thing. And that technically had to be Bane too, because I kind of wish he had kept fighting. I kind of was okay with it because they just put him through the ringer. Yeah. In this and Dark Knight. I'm no, you've earned it. You literally saved an entire city from nuclear annihilation. You kind of get the hit, and you get they established at the movie he's past his physical peak, even with all the training and stuff. There's also the cartilage and stuff. He just got his femur broken or whatever. No, you earned it, man. Go enjoy your life. I don't know why you're going with Selena, but I guess she's turned a new leaf too. And like you said, the Alfred, that last reveal. Just one nitpick I have is that it's a little confusing because they show him in the cockpit right before it goes off. But I guess the idea is he would probably have to have an ejecting pod because he would not be swimming away. Yeah. So it's kind of a clever fool, but it's a little confusing. Mm-hmm. I've also heard people saying, people were wondering when it came out if they were pulling Inception, and we were meant to wonder if the last scene was Alfred's dream or fantasy. And Nolan had to clarify, no, I wasn't going for that.
That would be stupid.
Well, I think it's because people bought into Inception a lot, and that became for the record, I think he was awake because I thought that I saw the top wobble a bit. Yeah. But yeah, it does put a good cap on things. It's we've certainly spent a lot of this talking about my issues with it, but you've heard me just raving about all the things this movie does right. I think it makes up and still makes it they can never equal Dark Knight, but it earns its place, and I think it's a satisfying finale. Like I said, it does some things better than not just the other two, but most other movies in terms of the escalation and the stakes, and in some areas the intensity. Because Dark Knight is more personal intensity. This really sells you on just the big picture. Yeah, I've never felt more scared for Gotham than watching Rises.
There's so much stuff. That's why I think that's another reason I think this Bane works, because he's such a showman. That we see the moment when he is got he's in the stadium making his announcement in front of all those people.
Breaking the guy's neck.
Pretty unbelievable. Yeah.
But he's it is a case where it's even in Dark Knight they kind of fool you halfway through and thinking the Joker screwed up. In this, it's not until the last half where you really Bane is a force of nature. He's unstoppable. This is scary. Yeah. I was I know they're not going to do something, but I don't know how they're going to figure this out. And of course, Batman figures out a way, and of course, it involves technology and remote blocking and getting the police on his side. That's a cool thing too, where the police kind of accept him.
Basically, all of the police yet.
Yeah, it's pretty great. This trilogy is pretty great.
I just to kind of cap it all off, I think these movies are spectacular. I kind of think they're the gold standard
for superheroes, and especially Batman.
I
just kind of accepted like they're never going to top this in terms of Batman. They're certainly not topping it right now.
No, absolutely not.
But actually, you know what? I do want to like cap it off with one other thing. I gotta post my favorite unintentionally funny Batman quotes because of the voice he adopts. A lot of people hate the voice. I don't, for the most part. There was one moment in each movie where it's so crazy that it kind of makes me laugh.
I'm not wearing hockey pads.
I'm gonna quote Dave Roberts from Generation Animation. Every time they brought up Batman, he just does that quote or puts a spin on it. I remember them putting an idea on doing it in Little Mermaid, and that Sebastian would be Bane. Like, you think you knew the sea, but I was molded by it. And they call it Bane Crab. Because that's a video. That's a video. Bane Cat. Look it up. No, I think most videos, he's not too bad, but there's one more. The problem is, for two of them, it's the climax. First one, because I remember looking at this, when he's like yo-yoing that mole up, like, swear to me, where are you don't want to have him asking where things are. Dark Knight, it's kind of, where are they, but more so, his last line to Joker, this city just proved to you it's full of people willing to do good.
And just for the people who couldn't see John do that, it is such a pain in the ass to do that voice that John had to grab his chest and almost lose his voice.
No, I haven't gotten to my favorite yet, and I haven't been getting much sleep lately. I feel like this last one's going to take it out of me. The mother of them, and it's of the climax of the series. Where's the trigger? Where is it? You never have to know it's certain. Where is it? Where is the trigger? Where is it? So he's just screaming, where is it? Over. It's so funny.
Dear everyone listening, you just missed an unbelievable physical performance.
I was pantomiming punching Bane. Did I should do that video where somebody compiled it in different languages? So it looked like he's punching Bane for like 2 minutes, doing like, at one point he's going like, say nar, tati-nar, and at one point he sounds like a true monster, like, blah, 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 blah.
Where's the trigger? Where is it? Where is it? 在哪儿？他在哪儿？他在哪儿？引爆器在哪儿？Where is it?
Christian Bale, I love you, and I think you're a good Batman and my favorite Bruce Wayne, but there's some moments where you had to have some restraint.
And dear all the listeners, I guarantee you that was a very stressful bit of audio you just listened to.
I got like 3 hours of sleep last night, so yes, I can feel my head a little fuzzy right now. It was worth it. And what a great note to go out on. I feel like this has been another one that's been a long time coming. Like, me and Chris talked about doing Sonic for a while, but me individually, I want to do this for a while. I know you're one of the person I know the most that holds it in a similar regard.
Yeah.
And just kind of, also kind of funny touching on, like, I did show this to Mimi, our grandma. I didn't tape them. That was a fluke. I taped, recorded Darth Vader, and then that started a trend. I remember being a little nervous that she would be intimidated by how dark and tense and serious they are. No, she loved them. And actually, Rises was her favorite.
Interesting.
I do know why, actually. Mimi brings it up all the time when we watch, like, a blockbuster. She really loves just a basic good versus evil story. Mm-hmm. And I think that is at its most clear cut, compared to the others, where the first one, they kind of going to explain it to you toward the end, and the second, the Joker is a very unique beast we're talking about in terms of his motivation and morality. Certainly evil, but kind of a weird kind. And I'd be very curious, like, if people want to write in with comments on this trilogy or any individual entries, like, you can write in saying Dark Knight sucks, or Rises Begin, or your favorite, or how, like, my coworker Begins is the only good one and stuff. I'm not going to argue with you, but I think it'd be curious to, because I am encouraging viewers to submit the feedback, because we want to discuss it on the air. Also, I'm saying now, you can also welcome to submit suggestions for the main topics for us. I can't guarantee we'll do all of them based on, like, what me and Chris and the other co-hosts feel about certain things, but we want to take fan feedback into consideration. Also, plugging time. Please consider leaving 5 stars on iTunes. And also, I heard recently some iTunes users have reported the app automatically unsubscribing them from certain podcasts. So please check, if you're listening to this on YouTube or elsewhere, please check your iTunes subscription if that's how you do this. That's how we get about a third of our listeners through iTunes. So double check that.
And if you need some help trying to figure out exactly, like, what kind of review to leave, I know it can be difficult to have to, like, work through, figuring out the right thing to say.
Think, what would Batman do?
Well, that's not what I was going to say.
Okay.
But I will say, just here, I'll write it for you. You just give 5 stars.
You did.
And then you
write.
did
Come up with ads for us last time.
Thank you. You just write. This is the only good podcast I've ever heard. See, it's that easy. That's
a recommendation. What if it's the only podcast they've ever heard?
Then that's still
I think
true.
For our parents and Mimi, that's the case. Like, oh, John's doing a podcast. That's Mimi's voice. That's not my mom and dad's voice. Mom and dad, you do not sound like that. But you are much less podcast oriented. Actually, did I listen to any?
I don't know.
Yeah, mom doesn't. She's all about her iPad, not so much podcasts. But Patrick, thanks so much for
it's awesome being
this. Turned
here.
out awesome, I think. And We did a very light high five there. I don't know.
We didn't want to break the mic here. We'll do a louder one for you people listening at home. Better one.
Well, we'll see how that comes out when I level everything. And man, your high fives always leave my palms stinging.
Yeah, that hurt me too.
Well, thanks for that. But so again, thanks so much for coming. We'll have to have you on again at some point. And Patrick, where can people find you on social media? Like if they want to hear what you're up to.
I am at Fleury P on Twitter. FLEURYP. That's where you should search for me. Unless you're not interested in people tweeting about how much they dislike Trump. Then you probably don't want to follow me.
Well, I technically fall into that category because I am a politics-fatigued man.
Yep.
But truthfully, I don't unfollow. I just mute.
But I also do every once in a while
the polite
post
behind
my
your back kind of
opinions
way.
on games and movies I've watched.
Yes, that too. I'm sure you've done a bunch of Battlefront and Destiny 2 tweets.
Yep.
I think actually after this recording, you're planning to try out Mario Rabbids.
I am.
And you just put your shirt over our head and disposing. Okay, anyway. Man, I wanted to make a joke about our hairy chest.
Let's not.
We got some Italian. It's the Italian in our blood, people.
All right, let's cut out.
Though I'm better at growing beards than you. Until recently, you're growing a very nice little stubble right here.
I hate you.
People, I am John Fleury.
And I'm Patrick Fleury.
And do a Bane quote. Just do something.
I'll take whatever's your favorite thing on the dollar menu. I think if I get the dollar menu fries, is it still a dollar if I get the 4-piece nugget? But I can only get one of the dollar menu items. I'm going to take an apple pie.
Was that from something, or did you improv?
That was it, bro.
Very nice. Now I'm imagining... his voice, you can imagine coming out of a McDonald's speaker.
Oh, yeah, that's where he's working now.
He survived.
He survived.
His new double life. It's a good thing people, like... He doesn't need the mask anymore, I guess? Or he's wearing a hood. Like, for medical reasons.
Yep.
Good night, everybody.